This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, and welcome to the Friday Twilight Show. I'm Claire Cannon, and thank you for joining me, whether you are here live or listening to the podcast. Today, I'm exploring the pros and cons of holding multiple leadership roles at once. Does this help or hinder strategic planning? And how about managing the competing demands and workload? Stay tuned to find out.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, and thank you again for joining me here on Teachers Talk Radio this evening, Friday the 11th of October. And in this show, I'm looking at the impact, good and bad, pros and cons, of holding multiple leadership roles. Coming from the fact that it's something that is being seen more often. And, you know, what actually does that mean for the people holding those roles, and also for their school as well? And I find this idea really interesting because it isn't just people who are, I say just, that's the wrong word. It isn't people who are teachers and perhaps also a head of subject. This is about people who have two very specific leadership titles, possibly even more than two, but it is two for the guest, Kate, that is joining me this evening. So what will happen, what is it like if you have two leadership roles? If you are, for example, the SENCO and deputy head, or perhaps the head teacher as well as the SENCO, or you are responsible for a key stage or a phase as well as another leadership role. It also could be people who have a leadership role but a very high teaching percentage commitment, perhaps more supporting ECTs as well. So all sorts of different things covered in this sort of umbrella category, if you like, of having two leadership roles or multiple leadership roles. Now, I guess like everything, there are pros and cons. There are always going to be things that work well, and equally there are going to be things that perhaps are more challenging. And my initial thoughts, and I would hazard a guess that this is probably most people's initial thoughts, will be around managing workload, managing well-being, and how do you balance the competing priorities? What is it that you decide to prioritise? How are you deciding what it is that you're going to prioritise? And what do you do with the things that you haven't prioritised? Because we all know that, you know, in a school, it's not that you can just not do something. It nearly always has to happen. It's just, when does it happen? Not if it happens. So just thinking about how we can manage all of those different demands on our time. But then that also got me thinking about the strategic impact. You know, that's kind of your day-to-day, what's happening for you in your role. But actually, what are the strategic impacts of having several roles at once? Again, you might think, well, how are you going to divide up your time so that you can get a handle on both? But actually, does it give you more of an opportunity to see connections between things? And you might sort of quickly and easily assume that having multiple roles is going to be a bad thing. It's going to be difficult because you have got that kind of never-ending to-do list, and you're kind of just always, I don't know, it could potentially feel like you're firefighting. But I think that's only really seeing part of the picture, and why, for me, I think this topic does deserve a little bit more exploration. So I am really excited. I can see that I think it's Kate. It doesn't actually show her name on my screen. It shows one of the random usernames that it assigns. But I think, there we go. I can see her message now. Hello, Kate. I can see you are there. So what we're going to do is have a quick break to hear from our sponsors. I've got a little bit more information to share with our listeners about things that I've found out just from a little bit of background research about the effects of holding multiple roles. And then, Kate, we will hear from you and your role, your thoughts, and what you can bring to the discussion. So, as I say, just a quick break now to hear from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK, home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
Teachers, mark your calendars for Bet UK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, Bet has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
Okay, thank you again for listening here on Teachers Talk Radio this evening. If you are live or if you are listening back on the podcast, thank you very much for downloading. If you are listening live, please do text in. It would be great to hear your thoughts on the topics this evening, looking at what it's like to hold multiple leadership roles. I'm going to be joined shortly by Kate, who has messaged to say she is here and is going to be joining us from the side of the road. Okay, I have to say that is absolute dedication and thank you. I'm just going to share a few snippets from some reading I did around the idea of having multiple leadership roles, and then we will hear from you and your thoughts. So, what did I find out? Well, actually, it was quite hard to find anything on multiple leadership roles. And I think that's because a lot of research is often based on things that happen in the corporate world and in industry. And actually, in those sectors, people don't generally have multiple leadership roles. You know, you're not the CEO and the HR manager. You're not the diversity, equity and inclusion lead and also, I don't know, the head of finance. You know, you only have one role. It's very specific. So there wasn't a huge amount, but I did find a couple of blogs, a couple of articles, mainly written by teachers or by people in education in some way. And I sort of put a little bit of a summary together, and Kate will perhaps pick up on some of these bits in a little while and see what you think about some of them. So let's start with the positives. What did I find out? So having multiple roles can be really helpful in setting the agenda. And I think that comes down to what I mentioned before about being able to see connections between things and therefore being able to see what is either likely to happen next as a potential difficulty or as a potential success that you can then build on. So thinking about using those dual roles, all of the different information that you are gathering by holding them, and actually helping you then to think about what are we going to be doing next. So really around that strategic direction. There's also some points about having a broad understanding of the organisation you work in. And something that actually was quite resonated with me, actually, in terms of, we've all been in schools where something's been brought in and actually in practice it hasn't quite worked out as it was intended to work. And this was, if you have more than one role, you can really get a handle on whether your policies actually work in practice, and do they work in all of the different parts of your school, whether that's different key stages, whether it's different subjects, whether it's for people with quite different roles within your setting. So that was quite an important one, I think. And that led on to also developing your breadth of knowledge. And that wasn't just about policies, but actually all around your setting. What is going on? What's going on for the staff and what is going on for the students? And can you see connections more clearly or in a different way because you have those two different roles going on? Next one was quite an interesting one, and this was not so much about you as the holder of those roles and what you do, but actually what others are doing. And if you have two roles, you're kind of, the implication there is you are going to be quite busy, probably very busy. And actually what it does is it can encourage you to delegate to others, which actually can empower other staff in your team to take on a bit more responsibility, which for their career development hopefully will be a positive thing. So interesting there that wasn't just thinking about the person themselves holding the dual role, but actually how that can impact other people. Now, something else that came up in a couple of the different articles that I was reading was being able to see your vision becoming a reality. And again, I think that comes back to seeing the different parts of the school and how that vision is playing out, what's happening with it in those different areas. It also means that you are more likely to be able to spot problems at an early stage. And we all know that it's better to fix a problem when it's small and try and find a solution than when it has escalated and got a bit bigger and it's going to take a lot more resource, time, people, whatever, to sort that out. And that linked very nicely into the last point that I found, which was around being able to effectively manage your team and deploy your resources, whether that is human resources or financial and other things that you have available to you. So some really good, really nice positives actually connected with having those multiple leadership roles all at the same time. But, and there is always a but, there are going to be challenges. The obvious one being time and your to-do list, and always, needing more time, always having those things that you think, oh, I need to get around to doing that, but such and such has had to take priority. So being able to manage that is going to be a key skill for somebody who has those dual roles. But what can sometimes happen is when we feel like we are losing control of a situation, is we start to micromanage. We start to kind of try and pull back control and almost, take that pendulum too far the other way. So if we do that, it's about knowing our own signs, knowing what is it that, how's that going to feel for us? What are we going to notice ourselves doing? And then what are we going to do to prevent that from carrying on? Which potentially is also about, your availability for your team. Are you able to be there for them? If you are a leader across multiple teams, are you able to really make those connections, build those relationships that we know are really valuable for supporting staff development and for supporting staff well-being? What we don't want is more and more people struggling with their well-being, struggling with mental health, and potentially things like burnout. So again, there are some concerns around having all of these different responsibilities going on for one person at any given time. And something else that stood out for me was, a lot of people go into teaching because we want to help people. We want to support our students and our staff. We want to help them develop. We are helping. We are people-focused people. But actually what that also kind of brings with it is wanting to do things well for other people. And if we have too many things going on, sometimes it can feel like we haven't really given our full attention or our full time to a task, and perhaps that can have an impact on our own well-being if we feel that we're just doing things superficially or not to the level that we would want them to be done. Which, that feeling of being overloaded, that feeling of being stressed and potentially even burnout, we know is a massive risk to recruitment and retention. We can lose key staff because they feel, actually, this is too much. I can't cope with this. It's impacting, my life outside of school. And, something's got to give, something's got to take priority, and perhaps that's them instead of their role. So again, something to be mindful of. And the other thing that came up was potential conflict around responsibilities. So if you're head of Department 1 and also head of Department 2, what if one wants to go in one direction, one wants to go in another? How do you manage that? It might be something you can navigate quite easily because they're two very different departments, but they are all in the same school. They are all working towards the same priorities ultimately. So how do you kind of navigate those differences? That again could be something that's quite challenging. So just a couple more things from me, and then Kate, we're going to get you joined in. So how can we mitigate against some of these things? There's definitely some pros there. There's definitely some positives to having dual roles from what I've been reading, what I've shared with you. Equally, there are some things to be aware of. So what can we do with those challenges to try and make sure they're not causing us difficulties? The big one is self-awareness. Was Mental Health Day yesterday, World Mental Health Day yesterday. I actually think it should be every day. I don't think it should just be one day. I get the fact that we have a day to kind of raise awareness and everything else, but mental health is every day. It's all the time. So being self-aware, knowing your warning signs, being reflective about how you feel, your emotions, how you're behaving towards other people, and just noticing perhaps when things are changing and changing in a way that you wouldn't want them to change. And that's something then to do something about. Not just park and go, oh, well, I'll be fine tomorrow, but actually do something about it. Another thing actually linked to one of the points I made earlier about delegating is building strength and resilience in your team. What can other people be doing to support you? What can you be doing to support them? So it becomes a kind of self-sustaining system where everybody is looking out for one another. And on that note, actually, taking time to plan strategically. And for some people, that can literally be locking their office door and saying, I'm, out of action, if you like, for the next 2 hours, and just spending that time. I know for some people, becoming more and more common to actually have some time to work from home, free from the distractions, free from being called to a corridor, and actually just having that quality time. And the 2 hours you get at home, and I know from personal experience, the 2 hours you get at home is kind of equivalent to at least double that in school, because you can just get on and you haven't got other things going on around you. So lots of things you can do. Other sources of support. So you can use your governors if you have connections within the local authority to support you. If you're in a trust, you might have other colleagues that are in schools that run in a similar way. So it's about looking around, taking that step back, and seeing what else is out there that can help you. And I think that's true actually of lots of things, not just holding multiple leadership roles, but finding things that support you, your well-being, your personal and your professional development. Anyway, that is quite a lot from me. I would really like now to see if we can get Kate connected and live so that we can hear her. Kate, can you say hello to us? Let's see if we've got you.
Hi, Claire.
Fantastic. We have. That's brilliant. I'm always nervous. There's this bit
You and
in
me
case
both.
the tech doesn't work. It's great to have you here, and bless you. Thank you so much. Not only on a Friday night, but from a side of a road as well. That it really is dedication.
Well, I think we can actually blame my husband for that, because he needed to be dropped at the airport, and it's on the way back from the airport that it's like, right, I'm going to run out of time. I better pull over.
Oh, well, I hope you're somewhere safe and warm.
Yes.
And do let me know if you need to head off for any reason.
No, that's absolutely
That's
fine. I will.
fabulous. Kate, I haven't really introduced you because I think you're probably the best person to introduce yourself. So would you be able to just share a little bit? 'Cause you've had quite a varied career from what you shared with me when we were setting up the show.
Yeah, so I came into teaching in 1997, which does seem like quite a long time ago now when I think about it. And I started out life as a French teacher.
Mhm.
I remember in my PGCE year being told that I would never get a job as a languages teacher because I didn't have German or Spanish with it, and looking
Right.
at them and just going, yes, but I have maths, so I will always be fine.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, in every single school that I have worked in over the 27 years that it is now, I've ended up teaching maths as well as French. So that in
Yeah.
itself is quite interesting. Um, I went up through the sort of curriculum side of things up to head of
Mhm.
languages. At one point, I was also an assistant head of year, uncertain at that point in my career which direction, but I went curriculum.
Yeah.
And then I took a break from secondary
Mm.
for various reasons, but also there comes a time when it's just enough. I needed to have a different challenge. I went into primary for a couple of years as a deputy head and as a SENCO. And that was when I
Mhm.
first picked up this kind of dual role kind of style to teaching, which was quite
Yeah.
interesting in itself, but also dealing with getting to understand the primary curriculum. I went back to secondary. I was responsible for SEND across a mat of schools,
Yeah.
so several schools, but also SENCO in one particular school, so a dual role at that point. And then from there, I took a step back to just being SENCO as I went through a divorce, and
Mhm.
then stepped back up to being an assistant head and SENCO, and that was last
Wow.
January. And then in March, I think it was promoted to deputy head, ready for a September start, but I started in July.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on your promotion, first of all, 'cause
Thank you.
that's quite a step up to take, isn't it?
It is. It's a little mad, but I love it.
Well, I think we kind of do it because we're a little mad, don't we? Sometimes.
Yes. Well,
But
you go for it.
no, as to say, I'd definitely get bored if I was just stuck behind a desk all day.
I mean, as a SENCO, it's impossible to get bored. There is absolutely
Yes.
no time, no capacity for that whatsoever. Every day is varied, every day is different. But when you add in another role on top of that,
Mm.
then variety really does kind of kick off and be the spice of life.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't remember if I shared with you actually, but that being Senko was one of my previous roles as well. Although it was on its own, and I have to say it was busy enough.
Yeah.
So, all credit to you for managing both. I'm kind of curious because quite often when you hear that people have got two roles, it's because sometimes it's linked to budget and someone has left and the school's not, perhaps not got the capacity to have a separate person, so it gets added on to someone else's role. But has that sort of been the case for you, or has yours been more of a conscious choice to take on
Mine
more
was
than one role?
conscious. It was a
Yeah.
very, very conscious choice. When I was SENCO in my previous school, it was in a school that's in the same mat that I'm in now.
Hmm.
And I was kind of introduced to the possibility of a job in another school as an assistant head SENCO. Went to look at it and thought, actually, this could be quite fun. I quite like the feel of the school, the people that are in it, the teachers, the students, the area, the whole thing just felt right.
Yeah.
And so to get that was brilliant in itself, and start to pick up the pieces that existed from the fact that the previous SENCO had left a few months earlier.
Yeah.
So that was already something to get my teeth into. But then we had a situation where the actual head was decided to retire. The deputy head went for the job, didn't get it, so he then moved on to get a job elsewhere.
Yeah.
During that time, we'd obviously interviewed and appointed a new head, and then it was, we're going to need a new deputy. And I had a conversation with my husband about this, and he said, you know that you're going to be better than all the other people that apply, so you need to do it. So
Wow.
it was on his advice really, because he did kind of do a whole, you will be dissatisfied if you have to work for somebody, if you
Hmm.
see somebody in that job role that you know you can do, and you don't think they're doing it as well as you could do it, so you've got to do it.
Was he right in that sort of character analysis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Irritatingly.
But don't tell him. Don't tell him
Well,
he was right.
he'll probably know by now already.
Is he listening in?
I think he might do.
Oh, fab. That's really interesting, actually, that you have made that conscious decision, because I think it's quite common for it to be a kind of inherited role when somebody leaves, and a position
Mm.
needs to be done by somebody. Um, I just wonder, really, if you know what it's like to have one leadership role. How, we're thinking about some of the points I was talking about earlier on. Sort of, did any of those particularly sort of resonate with you? I wonder what your thoughts are.
Most of them did in one way, shape, or form.
Mm.
But with the Friday night brain after work, you may have to
Yeah.
recap some of them for me to pull me back in so I can give my proper opinion. The main one, realistically, for me was that doing behaviour and attitudes as
Mm.
well as SEN. For me, there is such a huge link there.
Yeah,
They almost shouldn't be pulled apart. I
that's
live
interesting.
I live permanently in the belief that all behaviour is communication. So
Hmm.
what are you trying to tell me? What need is it? What need is it that we're not meeting? What is it that
Yeah.
you need from us to be successful? So whenever there is a behaviour that happens in the school, for me, there is something to be unpicked. And of course, with 13, 14 years of working in SEND, I can start to kind of pull the threads and try to work out what is going on. In my last school, the deputy head who was in charge of behaviour and attitudes used to say, "Kate, can you come and talk with this child and use your witchetty sense to work out what it is that's going on?" Because there is a sixth sense for it in some ways,
Mm.
and knowing which direction to take the questioning in order to get some kind of answer that makes sense of why what's going on is going on. So behaviour and attitudes, that when you've put the behaviour in touch with the SEND, there's such a clear link,
Yeah.
that you can start to pull apart what's happening and then start to put in place the support and the structure to be able to help that young person. The other side of what I have on my plate is the attendance.
Hmm.
So much attendance, especially since COVID, is tied up with anxiety and tied up
Yeah.
with unmet needs and young people saying, "But I could do this at home much better. Why do
Hmm.
I have to go into school to do it?" That actually I'm able to work with parents far more sensibly, than perhaps a straightforward attendance lead who doesn't have that
Mm.
understanding of why it is that child has ended up in this situation post COVID.
Yeah. And you said sort of about some of the points I'd mentioned earlier. One of them was around being able to see connections between things. And I think what you've said there really illustrates that point. And I like, what particularly what you said about behaviour and attitudes perhaps shouldn't be pulled apart from SENCO, because actually a lot of the time it's an SEMH need, isn't it? That's going on.
It is, but equally, I could also argue that teaching and learning shouldn't be pulled apart from SEND. And I remember that when we were interviewing the new head,
Mm.
who is obviously now my new boss,
Yeah.
and he remembers very distinctly in his interview the questions that I asked him, which of course I can't remember, um,
Yeah.
but but his answer was not satisfactory for me, and so I dug further. And
Mm.
I must have asked him something around, where does SEN sit in the teaching and learning kind of area? Do you
Mm.
see it as a bolt on? And
Yeah.
he came back with his response, which made me think, okay, you're a good guy. I can work with you. That's
Yeah.
all right. But it is that whole part of, if you can understand your SEND needs, then actually you've almost got teaching and learning cracked to a certain extent, because
Yeah.
what works for
Yeah.
one is going to work for everyone. It's not going to disadvantage anybody.
No, no, not at all. And I like that idea of SEN being built in rather than a bolt on.
It has to be integral. It really does. And anywhere that isn't making it is always going to be denying those SEND students full
Mm.
access to the curriculum.
Yeah. And that's crucial, isn't it? Because we know that some of them will get fantastic GCSE results by the time they're year 11. Some of them will go on and do something completely, on a different path, won't they? But
Absolutely.
you've still got to give them the tools and the foundations so that they can take whatever path it is that they're going to take.
Absolutely. Those skills and strategies are absolutely crucial. Otherwise, they're not going to go anywhere in life, and we have failed them.
That's quite a stark way of putting it, but it's true. We absolutely have failed them if they haven't got something from their time in education. 'Cause 11 years is a long time, isn't it? If they walk away with nothing,
Yeah,
what job have we done?
absolutely. And I've still got children in year 10 whose reading ages belong in primary school.
Yeah.
And that's one, but I'm expecting these young people to be able to access GCSEs, or should I say, the system
The
is
system has, yeah.
expecting these young people to access GCSEs.
Yes. And that bit about the system actually sort of leads nicely into something else I wanted to put to you is, you've talked, and I actually really passionately, about the connections between the different roles that you hold. But I wonder also, are there some competing priorities that you are having to navigate between?
Oh gosh, always, always. And that's part of the trickiness of having two such crucial roles in a school. And it was one of the reasons, I mean, my head teacher was very honest, the new head,
Mm,
when he employed me, because actually he selected me from a group of three and he had his reservations. He wasn't actually
okay.
in post, but he was coming in on a regular basis because we're all part of the same trust. Um, and he was rightly concerned about, hang on a minute, SEND, I've line managed them. I
Mm,
know what a just a loaded job it is.
yeah.
Your time is pulled already in several directions, and then we're going to put this on top. How do you see it working?
Yeah.
And we talked about the need to actually put in a deputy SENCO or to put in somebody to support on the behaviour side of things,
Mhm.
whilst we rejigged and resorted things between us as to how it would all work. At the same time as both of us building a trusting relationship with each other. So that it's not even, whilst he's learning the school,
Yeah.
and whilst
Yeah.
I've only been there
Yeah.
for 6 months, there's a catalogue of variables there that could all be disastrous.
Yeah.
At the same time as the majority of SLT being new by the time we started in September.
Wow.
Yeah,
But I mean, like you say, there's clearly some potential pitfalls there, but what an opportunity as well.
totally. I'm at a point. I mean, we're in a small school. We have higher than average SEND, which was
Mhm.
one of the reasons why he was looking at it, thinking, actually, do you know what? With our higher number of SEND, this is probably the right way to go about it, and we need to look to the future about what we do long term with the fact that our numbers are rising on
Mm.
almost a daily basis. We started the academic year one side of of a hundreds, and
Yeah.
we're already 5 weeks in, and we've already surpassed and gone the other side, and actually looking at, are we
Wow.
going to have to close year groups because we're becoming ever more popular because of the fact that we're seen as looking at things holistically and cohesively.
Yeah. And that's really, that shines through as a sort of strength of you having those multiple roles, because you've talked several times now about seeing those connections, the day-to-day stuff, when you gave your example of the student who's dysregulated and being able to unpick and
Yeah,
find out what's happened for them, but also that forward planning, what's happening this term, next year, 3 years,
yeah.
5 years, whatever. You've got a real clear sense of the picture because you have your sort of finger in many pies, so to speak.
Yeah, and there part of it, I think, as well comes from, if you do need people at the top who have a good understanding of SEND.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that to me is crucial, because if you don't, then actually what you have is somebody who is wholly guided by the data, wholly guided by,
Mhm.
I've got to look at my P8, wholly guided by all of those things. Oh, Ofsted's coming in, this is happening, got to make
Yeah.
sure we got this paperwork. And actually you forget the child's at the centre. And so when you have somebody or more than one person at the top who has that knowledge and who has a passion about making the system right for the students that you have in front of you, not
Yes.
all students, but the ones that are in front of you, not the ones that are
Mhm.
somewhere else in the mat, the ones that are in this school, then actually you have a chance of pulling all of those parts together and actually looking at everything collectively. And it's, for me, it's huge when I look at all the schools I've worked in, all the head teachers that I have worked for, none of whom had a background or had an understanding of SEN. And then when you actually work with somebody who gets it and who sees your passion for it and sees how important it is and how it sits and holds everything, it's great.
Yeah, and it does sound amazing, and I can really see, from what you said, why that would be a draw to parents. And I guess before we're going to take a break in a minute for the news, but we've talked a lot, or you've talked a lot about the staff and building the relationships with a very new SLT team. But I suppose that goes beyond the school, doesn't it? Because you do have to think about your community, your students that are with you, but also your parents.
Yeah, we had a couple of parents in this last week a bit concerned because we've amended the behaviour policy, and actually when we unpicked the behaviour policy with them and the parts that they had concerns about, actually they could see that perhaps there was some misinterpretation on their part of things that we have said, and they could see the rationale for why we're doing certain things that we're doing. We are very much a connection before correction. That has to happen, because you can tell a child what they need to do, but if they don't have respect for you and they don't want to work with you, then actually they're just going to rail against it, and it's what you've said is irrelevant. So that whole holistic working with the child, looking at it from every angle, having all the parts pulled together is immensely important. And sitting there with those parents and talking about it and being able to say that I had a conversation with my head teacher when there had been an incident with a child and something had happened in a previous school, that child would have simply been suspended, end of discussion. Whereas actually he and I had a discussion. Okay, let's look at the situation. Right, this has happened. Does this child have any HCP? Okay, what are their special educational needs? Okay, is this something that this child had control of? Yes or no? No. Right. So therefore we can't suspend, because actually we're then suspending them for having these
A
conditions.
special need, yeah.
Exactly. And then it was like, okay, so how do we pull it back? What is an appropriate sanction? So even though the behaviours policy is there and it sits very sort of easily readable, the sentence is in there that about the fact that these will be adjusted where appropriate for children with special educational needs. But it's not a line in a policy, it's something that's enacted. And that's so crucial in itself.
That is absolutely crucial. While you were talking there, I wrote down a couple of words which sort of I asked you really whether you think this sort of summarises what you're getting at in terms of your culture around responding to situations, which is being consistent versus being rigid.
Well, when we started doing our training with the staff in the summer term on our last inset days, we actually referred to it as we need to be the premier inn. And we actually went down that path because everybody knows the consistency that you get from one room to the next, from one premier inn to another premier inn. It's just consistent all the way through. You know exactly what your diet's going to be. You know what the bed's like. You know what the duvet's like. Everything.
The colour on the walls. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know. And that's how it needs to be in schools. They need to know that when they go from one teacher to another teacher, it's consistent. They need to know that the behaviour system applies from one teacher to the next. It's consistent. They need to know that everyone is picking up, everyone is going to support them into being ready, respectful and responsible. They know that. That's what we're about.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And I think, what a way to start the year with that already in place, especially with a new leadership team and that opportunity to really shape the culture of the school moving forward. And it sounds like you've starting from an amazing position, especially with everybody having that understanding. It just does sound brilliant for the young people who are so lucky to be coming to your school.
Well, that's what we think.
Well, I guess by what you've said about parents, parental interest as well, it's definitely something that's out there, isn't it? And people in your local community are clearly picking up on which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean they always have concerns as new people coming in. Will it be the same? Won't it? Will it change for the positive? For the negative? How's it going to be? But we have to make sure that the students get, excuse me, everything that they need to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Kate, it's been amazing sort of talking to you about what is going on for you in your role in the school. After we've taken a quick break now to sort of hear the news, hear from our sponsors, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you thinking about your kind of professional development and how that's been for you as an individual, because you've actually had several dual roles, which is quite an interesting situation. So I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes' time. Thank you very much for what you've shared so far.
No problem.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE, using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
Teachers, mark your calendars for BetUK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, BET has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This week, the BBC reported concerns the national curriculum does not teach children enough about getting out of difficulty in open water. Gary Gentle, head teacher of Bilston Church of England Primary School, said there should be more emphasis on teaching water safety. While the national curriculum mandates that all schools must provide swimming instruction and that children must be able to swim proficiently over a distance of 25 metres, however, statistics gathered by Active Black Country showed 48% of primary school leavers, that's 7,884 children across the Black Country, were unable to demonstrate safe self-rescue. In another headline, teachers' working hours remain consistently high. The annual Working Lives of Teachers and Leaders research, which is published by the Department for Education, finds that full-time leaders report working 58.2 hours a week, and full-time teachers reported working 52.4 hours a week, which is up from 51.9 the last time the study was conducted. Education Uncovered reported that the largest 2 schools within the Astria Academy Trust have seen the number of students staying on in the sixth form collapsing following the introduction of reduced subject options, strict behaviour regimes and centralised teaching. Long Sands and St Ivo Academies, both in Cambridgeshire, saw the number of students starting in the sixth form falling by a combined 40% from January 2019, in the year the Trust took them over, until January 24. Astria had implemented a number of changes on the basis of students' sixth form choices. While this may be the explanation for fewer students entering the sixth form, it seems clear that sixth form numbers have been on a downward trend since Astria arrived, and the Trust introduced tough new rules on behaviour, uniform and equipment following the arrival of Richard Tutt as Director of Secondary Education. Mr. Tutt's leadership has also seen centralised teaching approaches put in place. Sky News reported that most teachers have seen pupils in dirty clothes with unwashed hair and unbrushed teeth in the past year. School staff reported personally washing pupils' uniforms and buying soap, toiletries and laundry detergent for families in need. And the majority of teachers have witnessed pupils attending school in dirty clothes. 4 in 5 school staff believe there's been an increase in hygiene poverty, and a third of these said the rise has been significant, according to a poll carried out by Census Wide in September. Almost all news outlets this week covered the fact that teachers in England have voted overwhelmingly to accept the pay rise offer. The NEU Snap poll showed 95% of members voting for the 5.5% pay rise, ending months of industrial action. And as the result was announced, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson launched the next pay round for 2025 to 2026 with a letter to the School Teachers Review Body asking for their recommendations at the earliest opportunity. In future, we may see the end of the old-style essay written on wobbly tables in exam rooms, since Cambridge International announced digital exams. 6 subjects will have digital exams from 2026. Cambridge International Education said the planned global rollout across full range of Cambridge curricula covering IGCSE, AS and A-level will begin in 2026. By 2033, Cambridge says 85% of all its high-stakes qualifications will have a digital option. Another possible insight into the future of education, not unrelated to digital exams, comes from The Atlantic magazine, which reports increasing evidence that college students arrive at higher education unable to read books. Students now seem bewildered by the thought of finishing multiple books in a semester, and one lecturer commented, "It's not that they don't want to do reading, it's not that they can't read, it's just that they don't know how to, and high schools have stopped expecting them to." This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with John Gibbs.
Thank you very much to our sponsors and to our newsreaders, as always. I have got Kate here this evening, who has already shared some fascinating insights into the pros and cons, highs and lows, and so everything in between, really, about having multiple leadership roles and what that's meant for her school, what that's meant for sort of relationships with SLT, with other staff, with the parents and the students. And Kate, thank you for being here. I know you did say at the beginning that you are parked up at the side of the road, so an extra special thank you for staying with me. And I wondered if we could sort of spend the next part of the show thinking a little bit more about how the dual roles and how, you know, you've had that situation more than once, what benefits that's had for you in terms of professional development, your career, because it is something that's quite unique. And I guess you've had a flavour of lots of different things over time.
I have. I mean, I suppose what it's done for my career is it just means the part for me that was the most interesting probably was going into primary school, and understanding the younger child and therefore what we inherit when they come up to secondary school. Because we sometimes forget how young they actually are when they come up,
Yeah.
and how green and young, you know, there's all different aspects to it. So that meant that when I took on the role as a mat lead for SEND, it meant that I could go into the primary schools and work with their SENCOs because I'd got an understanding of it, but I could equally go in and work with all the secondary schools because I understood far better where they'd come from and what their needs were and why it was that they were behind in certain aspects, or what needs needed to be addressed. So that, I think, was probably one of the best things that I ever did, just because it was so different. And to be able in any interview to say, I have worked with reception through to year 12, year 13
Yeah.
is different. And then to be able
Yeah.
to, across different disciplines because of my subject backgrounds. Other than that, I think being sort of being looked at by somebody who said, where your passions lie, you should be not looking at teaching a straightforward subject. You need to be doing something that is more holistic, and you should be looking at becoming a SENCO because you are amazing with all the children that struggle. And you kind of look at something, you think, okay, that's a bit different, and then discovering that actually that's where your true vocation lies,
Yeah.
is pretty amazing.
And I don't think anybody could deny the word holistic applies to you, given everything that you've covered over your career. I mean, starting off with French and maths in itself, that's a
I know.
combination, isn't it? And then to have gone between the age ranges as you have and the different roles. I guess the other thing I'm sort of thinking about is, I suppose, what people might think of as more like the pure leadership skills. So things like the delegation, the time management, and actually just hearing the news there where they talked about people in a leadership role working
Yeah.
52 something hours a week. I mean,
Oh, I
what
wish.
what are your what are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the things that's the biggest kind of change for me is that, yes, you have to delegate, but
Mm,
there has to be a delegation with a check-in and a closing the loop, because
mm,
you can't keep delegating if you don't know that the person is going to do the job to the standard you want it done, unless you go back and check in on it and
yeah.
make sure they're clear about what needs to happen. So that's one side of it that's incredibly important. The time management, you have to set aside certain parts of your day
Mm.
to certain different tasks. Now, obviously, at the beginning of the academic year, as a SENCO, that's impossible because you
Yes.
have several parents who all want a piece of your time, and you have
Now.
to give it. Yes, now. And why
Yeah.
can't I have it now? And I think currently my diary now is, we have another 2 weeks before we break for half term.
Mm.
And I can't. I think I've only got about half a dozen appointments left before half term, before I'm
I can
fully booked.
imagine. Yeah.
And that's with trying to block out a day a week where nobody can have me,
Yeah.
because I have to be able to do some of the work at home. Or sorry, during the day. The other
Mm.
side of it is that I've always been a Sunday worker. And
Okay.
Saturday is for me, Sunday
Yeah.
is for schoolwork. And that's just the way it's always been. I think even when I
Yeah.
was a child,
Yeah.
I did my homework on a Sunday. Saturday was family day, or I was playing sports or doing whatever. But the part that I have to recognise is that other people may have their Saturday as their work day.
Yeah.
So actually, when I get home tonight, I'm going to need to run my data for attendance and behaviour for the week tonight, because I need to make alterations to my life, because I
Mm-hmm.
need to respect that other people will want to access the information so that they can quality assure and they can put the pressure onto other people. I don't like the word pressure, but it is to a certain
Yeah.
extent of,
Yeah.
have you done what's been asked of you? So I've I have to take into account the fact that I'm no longer able to think just about me. I have
Mm.
to be able to put everybody else in. And I know, for example, my boss, he's a Saturday worker, I'm a Sunday worker. So
Yeah.
that doesn't correlate, because by the time I might send him something on a Sunday, he's actually in family time, but he'll have sent me the
Mm.
stuff on a Saturday that I've ignored. So,
Yeah.
it's working with those kind of things, but it's
Yeah.
respecting the fact. Otherwise, I can find that I'm pulling the data and doing the analysis and what I would like to do on a Sunday afternoon, but I'm doing it at the same time as the heads of Key Stage are actually wanting to be using my analysis in order
Yes.
to inform what they're going to do with the tutors in the
Yeah.
upcoming week.
Yeah.
So there is an element of being slightly selfless with it, of
Mm.
accepting the fact that actually, do you know what, Friday night, I'm just going to have to work, because if the job is going to get done next week, and I'm going to make sure that everybody else's working week is possible
Yeah.
and is easier. Sorry, that was a very large tractor going past.
I didn't
Then,
hear it, but
oh, it's very loud here. Then actually I've got to change the way that I work, and I can't just be a Sunday worker now. I need to have done my data analysis, because I have no idea when other people are going to want to check in and use it. So that's probably one of the things that I've had to kind of change the most. Delegation, relatively good. I have got an incredible TA team, and I've got 3 or 4 of them who are all right. What can I do to help? What can I do?
wow.
And I just give them specific tasks, and
Yeah.
they're not tasks that will run on week in, week out. It's right, I need you to sort this. I need you to put the
Yeah.
tutor names on that, so that that can go out to the right people, and it goes in the registers, and it's done. And they do it. And that for me is amazing. So the where I have to go with the distribution of tasks and the delegation is very much about, okay, what am I not going to get done, because but actually is a simple enough task for me to hand over to somebody else and know that it will be done
Yeah.
effectively, easily, without pressure on them, because actually they're working with all the young people, you know,
Yeah.
9 till
Yeah.
3, or as I should really say, 8:30 till 3:15. You know, so I need to give them tasks that are doable, that when somebody interrupts them because they're dysregulated and they need to put that task down, they can then, when they go back to it, pick it up and go on with it. And it's not one that's spreadsheet orientated with, you know, important pieces of information. What they're doing is important to ensure that everybody gets the information,
Yeah.
but it's something you can stop, start, stop, start, stop, start as needed. A lot
Yeah.
of the stuff that I need to be doing needs my absolute focus.
Yeah. And just on that note, I sort of want to take you back a little bit to what you said about sometimes you need to block yourself away, but actually, if you flip that on its head, is that actually time that essentially makes you more available when you are available, if you see what I mean?
So the only time my office door is shut is if I'm meeting with parents. The rest of the time it's open.
Yeah.
I am always available
Yeah.
for any adult or any child that needs me,
That
because I
needs
don't
you.
think you can be a SENCO without doing that. And you have to be able to put work down, put your pen down, stop typing, turn around, face them, what's up.
Go and pick things up.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I did do in the summer holiday when I was moving office, which I seem to have done a ridiculous amount of times in the last 6 months, was I bought a sofa on Facebook Marketplace for 40 quid.
Yeah.
And I kind of, you know, my head, when he saw it, just looked at it and was like, what on earth?
What are
I
you
said,
doing?
it's like, I get crying people. I need
Yes.
somewhere the crying people can sit and feel comfortable.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's got my huge IKEA teddies on it. So, you know, those poor beasts have already they've had a few weeping moments.
Yes.
But that's what it's for. It's, you know, it's all about making the child feel safe.
Yeah.
And that to me is paramount. So yes, I'm now blocking out time in my diary, but those students will always come in. They're always going to interrupt me,
Yeah.
but it's more a case of me not allowing admin, because I've had to really push the whole, if you want an appointment to meet me, please contact school reception. They will put you in
Yes.
my diary.
Yeah.
I can't be dealing with that. I don't have the time. Somebody else can book my diary. However, I have to block it so that it says do not put any appointments this
Yeah.
day.
So they know when they can and when they can't.
Yeah. And so it's more about, it's not so much keeping the parents at bay, because the parents I need to see and
No.
I want them everywhere else. But I want a day where I can catch up on admin, where the notes that I've taken in meetings can be properly filed, emailed out to the parents, so they
Yeah.
have a copy of them. Who am I taking off the SEND register? Right, okay, I need to send the exit letter home with to that particular parent. Okay,
Yeah.
who needs to be put on a behaviour support plan? Right, I need to do that. Okay, who needs to have the attendance letter and the attendance meeting sorted out? You know, I need time to sit and go through those things, as well as talk with staff, check in with tutors. You know, it's relentless. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are times when I just really don't need any parents in my diary on that day.
Yes.
And I still have 5 lessons where I'm in class with children.
Wow.
as
So
well.
you, on top of everything else you got, I didn't actually ask you about that actually,
Yeah.
whether you had a teaching commitment.
It was, I mean, it was agreed at interview that I wouldn't have a teaching commitment because oddly enough, they thought that being deputy head behaviour and attitudes and the SENCO
Well, it was quite
might
enough.
be sufficient.
Yes.
But actually, when push has come to shove, I have a very small class in year 10 who
Mhm.
all need extra support. They all need pre-teaching and overlearning.
Yeah.
So it's not that I am preparing a subject for myself. When I see them, it's kind of like, right, okay, what do we need to work on next lesson? What is it that you've been stuck with so far? Okay,
Yeah.
your business studies, great. So I'll get some of the work from the business studies teacher or from
Okay.
PE, whatever it is, or maths, or Miss, can we do the science homework together? Because I just don't understand it. Right,
Yeah.
okay, let's go back. Let's have a look
Yeah.
at science. Science is not my thing, but okay, we'll work through it. And actually, my almost ineptitude in certain subjects is really good because I'm able to go, right, you've got to give me a minute to read it, digest it.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what monosaturates are. So we're going to have a look on the internet
Find out
and
together.
let's have a look. Okay, so it says it's this. Okay, so what does that mean? And we can unpick it together,
Mm.
which actually is kind of helpful for them because it's, I mean, I still don't know what a monosaturate is because I've forgotten, because it's not,
You don't,
long-term
yeah.
relevant to me. But nonetheless, there's, we go through that journey together and it makes
Mm.
them feel it's okay to not know.
Yes.
It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
Please don't ask me to draw anything. My stick men have
I'm with
different
you on
length
that one.
legs and arms,
Yep.
you
Stick
know.
people.
Yeah, but even they have the wrong length legs. So, art definitely out of my sphere of comfort, but most academic subjects I can kind of help, or
Mm.
I'm prepared and happy to go, right, okay, let's find out together because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a lovely way of modelling essentially being human to our young people, and saying to them it's okay not to know, because you mentioned earlier on about the system doesn't want them to do, or does want them to do certain things, and actually they're not square pegs, square peg round hole, isn't it?
It is big time for some of these young people, but that's where the joy comes in because you get to work with them and you get to
Yeah.
go, okay, so the system doesn't fit, so what does fit? What
Yeah.
can I do? How can I change your life so that you can find fulfillment and joy?
Absolutely. And that's crucial, because going back again, you talked about attendance, you talked about behavior and attitudes. If we haven't got happy, healthy people, we're not going to get anywhere.
No, and this is one student I have at the minute. I'm looking at putting this particular child into alternative provision for a couple of
Mhm.
days a week, and they want to know, what are your targets for this young person? Obviously, I don't remember them, all of them, and certainly not whilst
Yeah.
I'm sitting in the car. However,
Yeah.
one of them was about having sufficient self-confidence to actually be able to accept the fact that they need to do some academic learning, and that
Yeah.
they would have the sort of the mental space to be able to do that, rather than being constantly drawn into a place of anxiety of, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. Actually, what I need from you is to build this young person's confidence so that they can come
Mm.
back to me and I can say, okay, let's have a look at this bit of maths together, and for them to give, deep intake of breath. Okay, right, okay, let's have a go together.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I don't have that with that child because they need so much work on the social emotional mental health side of things to actually make them feel good enough to access learning.
Yeah. And that sort of mental health thing is, I mentioned earlier on again, World Mental Health Day yesterday, but
Mm.
it should be something that's a priority every day.
Yeah,
And I suppose, it isn't just for the students, it's for us as well, isn't it? Because if we're not in a good place, we can't co-regulate with the young people that need
absolutely.
us more than most. So I
And
suppose,
that's why I have the sofa in the office,
yeah,
because it is there, as I said earlier, for both adults and children, and the box of heroes is tucked away underneath.
where no one can see it.
Yes.
Yes, don't blame me for that one. Otherwise, I bet they vanish quick enough anyway.
They don't actually. They're pretty
How
good,
do they
although I
not?
do have a couple of students that know where the box is, so I do have to
Ah,
move it from time to time.
just to keep one step ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Kate, we're going to hear from our sponsors one more time in a few minutes, but just briefly, and we could do a whole show on this, I'm sure, but just thinking about the idea of mental health and well-being, you have got a lot on your plate, so your boundaries must have to be pretty kind of consistent and, tight and there to kind of protect you from everything else going on around you.
My husband says that I'm very bad at this. We were talking
Is
about
he?
it on the way to the airport, because those children. Once you work with SEND children, they're in your head the whole time, and they don't leave it. It's who you are
Yeah.
really. Um, at work, we don't call it a work-life balance. We call it a life-work balance, because that's what it should be,
Yeah.
and we're very keen for it to be like that, and for us to put that out across the whole staff and to make sure that we are looking at what our life work balance is.
Yeah.
I'm just terrible. I love my job, so it's really difficult to pull it apart. The one thing that I would say is getting a cleaner was the best thing we ever did.
Oh, I wish I could do the same. Cleaning
Well,
is not my favourite.
it's not mine, but it was one of the stipulations that when we agreed that I was going to go for the job, there
Yeah.
were two stipulations. One, I wasn't going to do any cooking in the evening,
Okay.
and two, we got a cleaner.
Yeah. But it's different for everybody, isn't it? And you two talked earlier on actually about, you're a Sunday worker, other people are Saturday workers. I suppose in a way that is a boundary in itself. You've talked about Saturdays being your family time, and even from a child. So maybe there's more. I don't know. Would it be fair to say there are perhaps more boundaries in place?
I mean, there are boundaries in place that, there's no question of that. But nonetheless, if he decides that he wants to watch a film that I have no interest in watching, I will sneak off and go and do a little bit more on that spreadsheet. I could just do some
Yeah.
very clever bits in there that, yes, look at the data it gives me. And then, before I know it, it's 10 o'clock at night. And then I'm sort of getting the, where are you? Why are you doing schoolwork? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I be? You decided to watch the
You're
football.
watching yeah.
That's of zero interest to me, and I could use the time more wisely. So I did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is, my husband's in education as well. So,
He gets it.
yeah, he gets it. And we always take time in the holidays to do the things
Yeah.
that we need to do together as a couple.
Yeah. And that's that's the important thing, isn't it? Is well-being is unique to each individual person. You can't sort of say, oh, we're going to do this well-being day and magically everyone's going to be fine.
No.
It's very much like SEN, isn't it? It's personalised and adapted
Yep.
and scaffolded and all of those things.
Absolutely. This weekend I'm going to work because he's gone away. I'm not
Yeah.
physically going to work to the building. I'm just going to be at home and
Do
I'm going
some
to be able
work.
to do some work.
Yeah.
But next weekend, he and I are going away, catching up with some friends. So I will be doing no work. However, I still need to get those spreadsheets done before I go away. Otherwise, no one else has them to work with. So it's that kind of thing that is where the boundary kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I suppose I can't really say it enough. It's finding the things that work best for you and your family. And it sounds like you've absolutely done that, which is brilliant. Kate, what I'm going to do is say we'll hear from our sponsors one more time, and then I just would like to come to you for a few sort of closing thoughts and any snippets of advice that you might have for people who have perhaps started this year with an extra role or are considering, like you did, considering taking something on in a few minutes. So we'll come back to you once we've heard from our sponsors.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Introducing Reading Solutions UK. Home to Dreambox Reading Plus, the online reading development programme, improving outcomes for students and schools nationwide. Create stronger readers in your school from Key Stage 2 to beyond GCSE. using Reading Plus's evidence-based adaptive technology. Reading Plus accurately assesses your students' skills gaps and places them on a personalised learning pathway, built to accelerate their strengths and improve on their areas for development. You can try the program with a free 4-week pilot today. Search Reading Solutions UK to find their website and request your free pilot today.
Teachers, mark your calendars for Bet UK 2025, the world's biggest EdTech event. Join over 30,000 educators at the Excel London from the 22nd to the 24th of January. Discover the latest EdTech innovations, network with peers and access hundreds of hours of CPD. Did we mention it's 100% free for educators? Whether you're looking for inspiration or practical tools to enhance your teaching, Bet has it all. Don't miss this opportunity to shape the future of education. Register today at uk.betshow.com. That's uk.betshow.com.
Thank you once again to our sponsors for supporting us here at Teachers Talk Radio, and a huge thank you to Kate, who has shared some really valuable pieces of advice already, some thoughts, and going right back actually to earlier on in the show, talking about the connections that she's able to see between different areas of her school because she has the multiple leadership roles all at the same time. And I think for me, the thing that is really coming through is Kate's passion, your positivity, your enthusiasm, and actually seeing the dual roles as something to relish and something to really get your teeth into, rather than something to be scared of and to worry about and to perhaps get in a bit of a pickle about. And I just wanted to ask Kate, as we come to the end of the show, what would she sort of say in terms of a bit of a summary, what it is like for her, what you think you might do with your role moving forward, and also any advice for people in a similar situation to yourself, Kate, or perhaps thinking about taking on that extra role in later in their career.
And I think the first thing that I would probably say is most important is when you're looking at doing something that is going to be time consuming, is going to take over your entire thought processes, and to leave very little time for, I can't tell you the last time I read a book, is you need to have the discussion with those that you live with. Because if everyone isn't in the same boat for this, then it's going to be a rocky ride trying to move your career forwards.
Yeah.
So that would be my first piece of advice, and it has to be something that's agreed and negotiated between the adults in the household, so that you get the dynamic, the daily dynamic, the weekly dynamic, the long-term dynamic correct. That's huge.
Yes.
I don't book holidays. He does that. I don't do the cooking. Either he does that or his son does that, who's currently living with us. I don't do the cleaning. We got a cleaner in, and I have to say, without fee, I would literally, I'd probably be crying at the end of the week. And to be fair, she comes in on a Friday, and all she does is 2 hours, just 2 hours of making sure that the sitting room, the downstairs, the stair, hoovered, bathrooms cleaned, kitchen looks livable in again. And it's, not the bomb site that it is by the end of the week. And to be able, at the end of the week, don't get a cleaner on a Monday, have a cleaner on a Friday, because
Top
that,
tip.
oh my word, it's just amazing. So that'd be that, because you walk in on a Friday tired and you walk into a clean house and it's just like, oh yes, I don't have to do that this weekend. So that would be those would be my two biggest pieces of advice to anyone who's going into this. Career progression for me, quite frankly, I'm in my 50s. I'm 27 years into teaching. I think those of us that have made it that length of time are few and far between.
Yes.
I have absolutely zero interest in being a head teacher. Absolutely none. It doesn't hold any kind of thought process of joy for me. When I was deputy head several years ago in SENCO in the primary school, I absolutely loved it. I loved being able to be part of that decision-making process, of having my voice heard, being able to be the advocate for the children and for the parents, and the complexity of actually being the advocate for the school the child and the parents when they're not all in agreement. It's actually is a really interesting sort of state of play to be in. Sometimes you feel like a lawyer for yourself in
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
unravel, and who am I here for? So that's kind of I've lost my train of thought within all of that. So yeah, where was I?
All right, you were talking about the sort of your primary school experience, and I think you said about being a lawyer for yourself.
Yeah, well, it's being a lawyer for everybody in the room, because when you're being that advocate for everybody, you're being the advocate for the child, but the advocate for the parent, but you work for the school, so you also have to be the advocate for the school. That can
Mm,
become quite an interesting kind of dynamic to have your brain sit in.
yes.
Um, and it is quite fun, but for me, it's always the child comes first, parent second, and school third.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible state to say when they're the ones that are employing you. But yeah, I have literally no interest in going up any further. This is where I
Mm,
actually really like to be. Um, when we interviewed my now boss,
mm,
um, it was very clear he and I are sort of relatively aligned. And then
yeah.
when I was interviewed for the post of deputy head, and I was asked the question, will you argue with him? Will you
Oh.
disagree with him?
Okay.
And I said, if you think that I'm going to start being a yes person for the first time in my life in my 50s, then you really don't know me. We will disagree,
Yeah.
but that disagreement is always going to be about two people who are passionately arguing for what they believe is right for the
It's
child.
best. Yeah.
So I have no issue with that. But if
Not
you
at
think I'm
all.
going to agree with him every day, then you're wrong. Once I step outside the door, yes, absolutely, I will be in agreement with him and I will back him 100%, even if
Yeah.
I've disagreed with the result in the room.
Inside in the room. Yeah.
But that's for between him and me.
Yes.
And you lot don't need to know about that.
No.
um
No.
and that's, we don't disagree, we're actually very much on the same wavelength. So
Mm.
that's another piece of advice that I have for anyone who is contemplating doing something as mad as having two kind of really important roles
Meaty
in school.
rolls. Yeah.
Yeah, is know the person you're going to be working with.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if you do not have the same values, you do not have the same ethos, you don't have the same sort of passion, drive,
Mm.
intent, then it is going to be a painful ride.
Yes, and that's really key, isn't it? Because I think it's really important that we can have those professional, challenge conversations and have, as you said, the disagreements. But actually, when you're out there and you're essentially in front of an audience, you are putting we're
United front.
together, united front. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all working to the same goal and the same system as in everything else. Just one little thing. It's not really a little thing. I think it's really important that you said you don't want to be a head teacher, because actually we don't have to be on this kind of juggernaut that's constantly moving forward. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? It's actually fine to be where you are and to really develop the role that you're in.
One of the things that I have the biggest issue in with teaching is people who have come into the profession and then within 5 years they're a head teacher. I'm sorry, it doesn't wash with me.
No.
Because you haven't lived the role, you haven't lived the job, you've just shot yourself through the system as fast as you can to get towards the top. I have no issue with the fact that in 27 years, fine, I've been deputy head twice, but I
Mm,
spent 2 or 3 years in each job role. And I was
yeah.
happy in each job role that I had until I got to the point of, okay, I can challenge myself further. When I hit the point of being just the SENCO, when I was going through my divorce, I actually kind of thought, oh, I know, it'd be really good fun. I'll do a master's,
Yeah.
and started doing a master's in special educational needs. But I'm having to put my dissertation off on a regular basis just on the grounds that I literally don't have the mental capacity to focus
Okay.
on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't have the interest in being a head teacher. Why
Mm,
would I want to put that final kind of piece of pressure on me? I want to love the job that I have. I want to embody it. I want to be the person that people
absolutely.
can come to, that they know knows their stuff, that is actually capable of of hearing them, of working with them, working for them, being able to take their voice upwards when perhaps they don't have not the strength of character, but they're like, oh my goodness, it's the head. I don't know that I can go and talk to
Yes.
him about this.
Yeah.
I like being that link, that conduit.
Yeah.
That's great. That suits me. I sit well there. Thank you very much. I'm happy. And actually, when you're in your 50s, do you need to really push that last one? Or is it okay to just go, do you know what? I love my job. I am happy
Yeah.
in it. Yes, I am well aware of the fact that the time will come when we need to actually appoint a second SENCO, and I start to step back from that. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with it at all, because I will still be there, and I will still be there, if nothing else, in advisory capacity. I will still there to support parents and to be there for the students. So, if that's the route it takes, then that's fine.
And that's what it
What
does.
a way to end your career.
I think that, yeah, absolutely. And what was sort of really coming through there is about being happy, doing a role well, and that sense of job satisfaction that's got to come first, hasn't it? And if you are in a role where you feel, I can do this, I'm doing the best I can for the people that matter, like you say, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, and people want to talk about mental health. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I've got no interest in going for a head teacher's job, because I'm happy where I am,
Yeah.
and I'm happy with the people I work with.
Yeah. And I think that is a really important thing. And of all the things we talked about this evening, which have been absolutely amazing, and I have to say, I think you win the prize for the most unusual location to have joined the show from as well. But if we can all take one thing away from this conversation, it's do the things that make you happy.
Big time, because otherwise, where is your work-life balance or your life-work balance?
Life-work,
My
yeah.
life-work is that I love my job and I love my life.
Yeah, and that really does shine through, Kate. And I absolutely want to say, it's such a huge thank you to you for being here this evening on a Friday in the dark, wherever you are parked up. It's been amazing talking to you, and we've got a few people who've been listening live this evening. I'm sure people who download the show when it's processed and ready, over the coming days, will get a huge amount from all of the different information, advice, thoughts, opinions that you've shared. It's been absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. I've loved talking to you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope you get back safely from where you've been. And I hope that everybody else listening, whether you are live or whether you have downloaded the podcast, you have a lovely rest of your day too. Thank you very much for listening. I will be back in 2 weeks' time, and do keep an eye out for all of the other shows that are coming up on Teachers Talk Radio over the next 2 weeks. Thank you very much once again to Kate, and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.